Hey guys, welcome back to Jay vs. Horror and another episode of Hardcore Horror Reviews. Now guys, this one's kind of a crossover because I'm also doing this review for Horror Movie Review Maniacs on Facebook. They have a movie club there, and every week somebody gets to choose a movie that everyone reviews. And this week, the movie was Der Todesking. That's right. The literal translation is The Death King, and it's a 1990 German horror film directed by Jörg Buttgereit. And I hope I got that right because I practiced it several times. This experimental style movie, which does not use central characters, explores the topics of suicide and violent death in the form of 7 episodes, each one attributed to one day of the week. Now guys, this is a strange movie, and there's a lot of different ways to see it. And we're going to talk about that at the end. But what we're going to basically do is go over each of the 7 segments that represent one day of the week and talk about each one a little bit. And it's odd because the movie's only an hour and 15 minutes, so each one of these segments is only like 10 to 11 minutes. And normally, this would be considered an anthology, but there is no connection between these stories other than the influence of death and violence and suicide and things like that. The only other real connection is that between each segment, and sometimes during each segment, we're shown a body that is dead and decomposing and at different stages of decomposition through each stage of the film. So that's the only real connection in here. And trust me guys, I tried to find different connections, but there absolutely were none that I could actually make. So let's get started. We'll talk about each segment a little bit, and then I'm going to throw my thoughts out there for the whole movie. We start with Monday. A man comes home, phones his boss to resign from his job, writes a mysterious letter, cleans his apartment, and swallows poison in his bathtub. His death is simultaneous with the death of his fish, the only being that was ever close to him. Now, guys, this is an interesting one. I mean, I found some beauty in this one, to be honest with you. A guy sits down, he writes this letter, he resigns, and then we're given this musical montage and a 360 shot that goes around this one-room apartment. It's very depressing, this apartment. It's just, you wouldn't want to live there. And it goes around, in a 360 angle around this apartment, and you kind of get the feeling that maybe 24 to 48 hours or something is passing by here. And I have no idea how they shot this, but it's really interesting, and that's where the experimental stuff comes in, I think. I don't know if the guy was running around to different segments of the apartment because it doesn't look like it's cut, which makes it very interesting. This one, guys, I don't know what to say about it other than it's kind of sad, and it shows you the loneliness of someone's life. But the thing with the fish, to me, is like a lot of people consider fish to be the smallest animal that have a conscious being. Most people don't feel like insects or things like that have any consciousness. And a fish, not being a mammal, is considered to be, especially a goldfish, maybe the smallest animal that does have a conscious being. And so what we're shown here is that life cannot be weighed. It cannot be valued more than another life, regardless of how big or small it is. And that's what I got from that one, guys. I mean, this is very hard to read. It's very subjective, and it's all about death and how you see it and stuff like that. So let's move on to Tuesday. Now, the Tuesday segment features a man who rents a film from a video store, a Nazi-ploitation movie in which female Nazi soldiers are torturing a prisoner in a concentration camp. They castrate him and paint a swastika on his chest. When the young man's girlfriend gets home, she starts yelling at him because he's home in the middle of the day, drinking beer, watching Nazi-ploitation. So what girlfriend wouldn't yell at him for that? And he shoots her in the head and blows her brains all over the wall. And then he takes a picture frame off the wall, breaks it, and puts the frame over the splattered brain matter. But then there's more, okay? So then we're taken back from that, and we see that all this is happening on someone's TV screen. And then in the background of that, we start to hear some sad music, and we see someone has committed suicide and that they are hanging from one of the rafters. We only see their feet in the bottom half, but we get the picture. And I don't know, guys. I mean, these are very subjective, like I said. And what I got from this one was that death is not that melodramatic. We like to make it that way in films, and we like to watch our horror films, and we like to watch our violent films, right? But in this, we're showing a guy who's watching a film that's completely ridiculous. You know, these two hot blondes are SS officers, and it can't, you know, even at that point, it's not even really horror. It's about kink and stuff, right? And actually, I felt like the guy they said that was in a concentration camp that they cut his penis off. I don't know that he was in a concentration camp. This seemed like something more like a kink, like he almost enjoyed it or wanted them to do it before it happened. And then the scene is so bad, it's like, you know, they cut it when they showed it in England, and it didn't even matter. It's just terrible. The scene of the penis being cut off is just terrible. And then we're shown the next thing, which is the guy who shoots his girlfriend. And even though that's a little less ridiculous, it still seems over the top. But then we see that all this is playing out on TV, and that a real death is happening in the background. So I think maybe the message here is that death is not so melodramatic. It's something that happens to everyone, and it's not such a major event that it needs to be, you know, embellished. Then we move to Wednesday, and this is, in my opinion, the weakest of the 7 segments. A man and a girl meet in a park in the pouring rain. The man tells the girl about his disastrous sex life with his wife, which led him to kill her. The girl pulls out a gun to kill him, but the man takes it from her and shoots himself because she didn't know how to operate the weapon correctly. She never cocked the gun, so he takes it from her and blows his own brain out. And it's a terrible effect. It's just like a little pop, and then there's some blood that goes like on a statue behind him. But I don't really think anything in this is about effect. It's more about the story. And in this one, I don't really know what to pull from this one, guys, other than, you know, for some people, death can be a relief. This man has committed an atrocious act that has left him more frustrated than he was before he did it. And so when she pulls out the gun, it could have been done a little bit differently here. Maybe she could have felt threatened by him, and that's why she pulled the gun. But she just pulls it out and sticks it, you know, at him. So it comes off very weird. But I think that the message here is maybe that, you know, death can be a relief when life is truly terrible. So we'll move on to Thursday, and Thursday is a weird segment that is not even really even could be considered a short film, I don't think. It's a segment that features a motorway bridge somewhere in Germany, and it's superimposed by the names, ages, and occupations of the people who have jumped from it and died. So as they're showing us different shots of the bridge and different angles and things like that, we're shown things that say like John Taylor, 25, student, Sarah Cunningham, 48, landlord, just different stuff. And it really, it seems weird at first, but it has a major impact, and it's very artful, and the shots are incredible. I mean, the way they shot this, it doesn't, you know, I've heard people online complain about, oh, this movie seems so amateurish. But that has to have been done on purpose, because the camera work in this movie is exquisite, especially for this era. And here again, you can see that they've built some kind of a crane underneath the bridge that's able to go and show you different angles as it moves along the undercarriage of the bridge. And they also show you different angles of the inside of the bridge and the workings of it. And yeah, it's impactful. I don't really know what you're supposed to get from this other than, you know, maybe the bridge is a metaphor, and these people who have died there, committed suicide there, they were fleeting. Their life was fleeting, and here's a structure that will remain way past all of that, way past all of us, probably. So, I mean, that's, as far as, you have to try to extract something from each one of these segments, and guys, that's about the best I could do. But I will say this, I found it very impactful, and one of the better segments. So then we move on to Friday, and here we're shown an older woman who's alone in her apartment, and she's observing a young, seemingly happy couple in their neighborhood. And she's kind of spying on them, and they're making love, they're making out, they're having a good time. And she gets tired of that, kind of seems like she's disgusted by it a little bit, and she goes out of her front door. And when she goes out the front door, she sees that there's a chain letter in front of her door. And I think an interesting thing here is that we're shown that these letters are in front of every door in the apartment building. The letter is urging her to kill herself, and it seems like it's been written by a cult or something, or someone of that nature, who is telling her that death is beautiful, it's something that everyone has to accept, that, nobody wants to be undead. That's unnatural. And then it talks about how there are 7 days in the week, and that the Lord created the earth and heavens in 6 days, and then on the 7th day he committed suicide. So all humans should give their life back to the earth to have this, cycle of life continue. And I found it very interesting. Now, this letter that she reads, the frustrating part about this letter that she reads is a full page, and she holds it up for maybe 2 to 3 minutes where you can see it. But being subtitled in English, all we see is maybe 4 lines of it, and so there's no telling what all was in this letter. But there was some very interesting things in it that this person said, even though it's like it's nuts. Nobody should go around committing suicide or anything like that. But there are some interesting points in this letter that I had never seen before. The woman then goes and has a couple chocolates, and she passes out on her bed, and she starts to imagine or dream about her parents having sex and her walking in on them when she was a little girl. And then she wakes up from that, and we go from where she's at back to the apartment with the lovers, who have apparently read this letter and decided to commit suicide because they've killed themselves. And man, this one is deep. If you're going to dig through this one, it's deep. You could just take the letter on its face value, as the things it says are pretty interesting. But there's also maybe the concept that, seeing these two lovers going at it, and then remembering the past of her parents going at it when she walked in, it triggered something for her. And in reality, that they weren't as happy as it seemed they were. They were very depressed, and this was some kind of way of offsetting that. And they did commit suicide at the end. So there, like I said, guys, a lot of this is subjective, and it's always about death. Everything in it is about death. And so then we move to Saturday, guys, and this one for me is the best segment. It's also terrifying in a way. A young woman equipped with a camera and a gun kills several people in the audience of a rock concert. And the frontman in this rock concert is actually played by a famous drummer in a group called DRC, which is a famous German death metal group. And she records all this on film, and then we see someone kill her, which is kind of the end of that. But before all this starts, there's a scene before she does all this where she's outside in a garden area, and she's talking to a small child. She's reading from a book, and she's reading about the reasons why mass murderers commit the atrocities that they do. And what's terrifying about this is that she actually kind of makes this make sense. Not that anyone should do this. I'm not suggesting that in any way. I'm not making or trying to make it sound like anything that happens in that realm is okay, but it does give an explanation for maybe how these people think when they do this. And she talks about how that, being dead and being noticed by all these people and finally being recognized and not being so much of a carbon copy of everyone else, to be an individual and to be recognized by everyone. To be alive like that in death is better to live a dead life. And there's some other things in it that are very interesting, but I'm not advocating for that. I'm just saying that it is interesting to see these thoughts put out there, because you never see that, right? And so then we see that this is pretty cool too here. This girl is able to rig this camera that films, beyond her. It looks like a big old style camera, but she's got it rigged to her with a brace, and it films everything that she sees, which is very interesting. And then when she goes to the concert, she just starts shooting people. She shoots, I think, 4 or 5 people, and then someone shoots her, and that's the end. I mean, that really what you get out of this is the beforehand. You get the monologue where she's explaining why people feel this way. And even though look, guys, you've probably heard me say this before. Who cares where stupid people get stupid ideas, right? People will say, well, they watched this movie, they played that video game, they heard that music, they did this, they did that, and it gave them the idea to go kill people. Well, who cares where stupid people get stupid ideas? Because stupid people will get stupid ideas from anywhere. They'll get them from the back of a pancake box, from anything. And And so I've kind of always looked at it like that. You know, these people are fragile enough that something could affect their psyche, then it's going to be anything. It could be art, it could be a statue, anything could affect their psyche. But this segment gives you a little bit of a breakdown and a little bit of a look inside the mind of someone who is thinking this way before their actions. And it's truly terrifying because it actually almost makes sense, which is always terrifying. And guys, then we move on to the last segment, which is Sunday, and this one made the least amount of sense to me, and I just kind of took it as the end of this movie and of other things. A man alone on his bed is crying and banging his head over and over violently against the wall until he succumbs to brain damage and dies. That makes it sound even more simple than it is, to be honest with you, because it's a long... I mean, it's about 10 minutes, but it's a long range of different emotions. You see the guy kind of tormented. At times he's just docile. And then he goes into this state of, you know, overexcitement where he starts banging his head against the wall and he's screaming and he finally just, you know, beats himself to death. And I think maybe this is some kind of metaphor for what human beings do with the question of life. We beat ourselves to death with it. We won't accept the truth of it. The truth of it is that we are here only to pass the torch on. That none of us are special. None of us are meant to live forever. And it's terrifying to all of us that that's the truth. That all we are here to do is to pass this torch on and to make sure that life continues. And I think that that is what that segment is about. Now, guys, as this movie moves on, like I said, we see these different shots of this decomposing body. And at first it's very... you look at it and you say, well, this is just a bad effect. I don't understand why they keep showing this. But then as we start to get towards the end of the film, we start to see that the body has become infested with maggots and things like that. And what happens in my mind is it's not really showing you death, it's showing you life. That life comes from death. That there can be no life without death. And that to not die is unnatural. And it's actually more terrifying than death. Because the only explanations we as humans can come up with for not dying is to become a computer or to become a vampire or some other thing that doesn't exist. And so the thought of being undead is unnatural, and that should scare you more than the reality of death, probably. Guys, I don't know. There's several different ways to look at this. I came up with 4 different ways to look at it while I was watching it. I'm just going to talk about a few of them. One way to look at it is like, okay, well, this is logic. Anyone with a brain knows all this. And you're just showing this to us to depress us, right? Because we're very aware of this. This epiphany that you're showing us is something that we all kind of logically thought out at around 13 or 14 years old. And so whether we decided to repress it or we just decided to go ahead and live our lives is one thing. And I think that that's an interesting point there because there's a high suicide rate amongst teenagers, and I think it's because they come to this conclusion early on in life and they're not able to move past it, that death is inevitable, and then they also come to the conclusion that death is very beautiful. And so then they embrace it way before they should. The thing they have to know is that everything is not so nihilistic. And the people who want you to believe that everything is nihilistic, they're hypocrites. Because if they truly believe that, then their idea of life and what it is and what it means shouldn't matter to them as far as pushing it on other people. If they believe that other people are living an illusion, then what should it matter? Because that means that they're also in the illusion. I would just say that, you know, I think movies like this have to be careful and they have to be viewed with a sensibility, you know, a certain sensibility that doesn't allow you to become dragged down. And so another way that you could look at this thing if you wanted to is just look at the whole thing like, God, it just seems like such a goth music video. You know, just a terrible goth music video that some 16-year-old kid shot with his buddies. But I think it's more than that. For me, it really, you know, I had those feelings, and I had the feelings about, well, this is so hypocritical of people to say that our vision or our view of life and death is correct and yours is... Because honestly, it feels like that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take a pin and pop the balloon. for a lot of people. And maybe some people need that, but most people don't. I found that most people have logical thinking, or a lot of people have logical thinking. So once you realize at a certain age that you are going to die and that is inevitable, these other things come to you. And so, for me, trying to tell people that life sucks and everything is going to end is just hypocritical. It's just you wanting to push your view or your illusion onto somebody else. Because the truth is, none of us really know anything outside of the physics of death. And the physics are facts. They're very black and white. You're here, you accept the torch of life, you pass it on, and that's what death is. It's just you passing on this existence that you were given, and then you go back into the fold of whatever happened before you were born, before you became alive. And so yeah, but then there's another way to look at this, and the way that I think that a lot of people should look at it is it is very beautiful. It can be very beautiful if you choose to accept it in that manner. You don't have to accept it as a depressing thing. You can accept it as, my God, I got to be a part of this. I got to be a part of this. This is the most amazing thing that has ever happened, and I got to be a part of it. There are people who feel that they are insignificant, and that is not true. And there are people who believe that they are the center of the universe, and that is not true. The truth of the matter is that there has never been a great masterpiece completed in history that didn't need the smallest stroke to be what it is. So even if you are the smallest stroke in that masterpiece, it could not be that masterpiece without you. So there is your significance. If you can't find it anywhere else, don't reach outside of yourself to look for it, and don't hurt yourself because you can't find it. Just accept what you are, and accept that you got to be a part of this beautiful thing called existence. Guys, that's all I've got on this one, and I really dug down and reached as deep as I could on this one. As far as hardcore horror, I don't, this guy's directed some other movies that would probably fit that moniker a little better. Necromantic and Necromantic 2. But this one is hardcore in a sense that it makes you think, if you'll allow it to make you think. It's very easy to look at this and go, oh man, I could have made this in, high school when I was 18 years old with some buddies. It's like Begotten but not as good or whatever. But it's not any of that. This guy knows how to make movies, and you can tell from his camera work and the way he sets things up, he definitely knows how to make movies. He's not trying to do that here. He's trying to make you think about death. He's trying to make you come out of your shell about it and accept certain other viewpoints of it. And one thing I do appreciate about the movie a lot is you could look at it so many different ways. You could be nihilistic with it. You could be like, oh my God, we're all going to die and everything sucks, and then that's just the truth of the world. But you could also accept your life as a gift and live it to the fullest each day, knowing that you never really die. You never really die. You might decompose. You might become something else. You might go back into the universe or the world, but that doesn't mean you're really dead. And guys, that's all we've got for this week, and we will talk to you the next time we've got something worth talking about. Bye.